begin. All right, let's start. So today, we'll be talking about how to plan your ISO 19650 journey, and we're going to delve into a little bit of the steps on how to get you there. So the steps to set the path. So nice high level, just a little bit of an ISO. And today, I'm going to be speaking to you. I'm Ahmed, applications engineer, BIM consultants, ISO 19650 lead assessor. And I have our moderator on this side here, our team leader, Michiel. And
I'm also just here as a pretty face.
there we go. So keep your eyes focused on him. All right, and he's our 19650 practitioner as well. Now, before we begin, this is a QR code for your CPD points. So I'm just going to give a minute or two for you guys just to scan that. I'll have it at the end of the presentation as well. So if anybody misses it now, or if anybody comes in a little bit later, we'll bring it up again for you guys. A good amount of information there. So there we go.
Yeah.
Get those CPD points, eh?
Yeah, I forgot I need to.
All right, let's take it off there. So very, very simple agenda that we have for today. What is ISO 19650? And then we're going to delve into what are the 19650 templates, where to get them, how we're going to be using them, and a little bit of a workflow for ISO 19650. So as I get started, we know that we have a lot of challenges when it comes to building information modeling and management. And it's only because we have multiple teams, multiple projects, and a lot of people with differing views of what BIM should be on a project. Why we're doing it, how it should be done. For instance, the appointing party thinks that it should be like the first image, whereas the engineer and contractor think the second image is more appropriate, and then maybe the subcontractor thinks that the last one is the one that's the way we're going to go. This is how BIM is going to look on this project. Now, this makes defining BIM a little bit of a challenge, all right? And we can all agree on that. And unfortunately, this communication leads to a lot of waste on our projects. So waste meaning duplicate effort. With all the differing opinions, we end up with the architect thinking that the light is going to be looking like that. The interior designer thinks that's what's going to be happening on site. And the electrical engineer and contractor have a differing view as well. So it's very important for us to get everybody on the same page. And again, a lot of challenges that we are hearing from the industry is, again, this list can go on. Difficult to manage information. Progress updates are taking too long. One of the important ones is we always feel like we're starting from scratch. Out of sequence work, scattered information, there are no standards aren't flexible. So this is where the ISO 19650 comes into play. And what is it? It's basically a document that outlines the concepts and principles for information management on a project. All right, so at each stage of maturity, perhaps each milestone on a project, and it's basically a framework for us to manage information, including the exchange of information, versioning, organizing the stakeholders or each of the actors that are on a project. You'll notice it says there, the ISO 19650 standards provide a unified approach for information management. We're collaborating with each other and we're modeling everything, but is there a platform managing all this information? All right, or are there standards out there that can give us a little bit of a starting step or a platform to assist us? So the ISO 19650 has a few process charts ranging from your information management during the delivery phase all the way through to your activities for mobilization and your activities for closeout for the project. So there are many workflows there. And ISO 19650 comes with documents. All right, now, hope you guys are ready. You get the OIR, the organizational information requirements. You get the PIR, so your project information requirements. The exchange information requirements. the asset information requirements, your BIM execution plan, your responsibility matrix, the task information delivery plan, your master information delivery plan, your RECI or your RACI charts, among others. All right, I'm not sure I'm the only one who feels this way. All right, it's quite overwhelming. So, how can we help? All right, steps to set the path. Now, first of all, you need templates. Okay, when you're starting off with this, you need a template for your OIR, your PIR, your AIR. Okay, now platforms like Planoly assist us with this. They've got the templates for us. Okay, we also need a library for our geometry and our elements. So our scope of works for each of the clients, all right, or each of the stakeholders, teams, consultants on that particular project. You also need to be able to print out, archive these documents, make them contractual documents, hold people accountable to this documentation. So I'm going to start off with the organizational information requirements. Now this is for the appointing party, for the client, for the owner. What are the objectives on this project? It's basically a document. What is the operation of this particular asset? What is the information pertaining to this asset?
Yeah, so to give you a kind of a breakdown, is the OAR is the bigger vision of an organization. You know, me as the developer, we want to build so many buildings in the next year. Our end goals are sustainability, net zero by 2030, whatever the case might be. This is what we capture in our OAR as an organization, and the information we want to be able to manage and use going forward.
The next one is our project information requirements document. So the project requirements are now specific to the project. For example, you've got your renovation versus your new build. The company might have the same organizational principles and targets, but will have a different approach perhaps to projects differently.
Yeah, so I mean your PIR talks to, as an organization, this is our bigger vision in our OIR. That OIR informs our PIR. What do we need to achieve on this project to make sure that our bigger portfolio gets to our vision, gets to where we want to be in the future. And that then gets kind of siphoned to this project specifically. This is what we need. If it's a commercial building versus retail versus new or renos, each one of them might have different criteria that falls within the organization. That's just kind of where you start specifying this info.
And the next one is our, did I skip one? The
AIR, yeah.
The AIR is the next one, the asset information requirement. So your methods and procedures to be implemented by the delivery team. All right, so coordinate those assets information for maintenance, etc. Example, your office building for your company's use versus office building for tenant use, or medical building versus hospital building. So all information pertaining to the asset.
Yeah, so this becomes quite confusing if you start breaking out all these documentation. So you got your OAR as our leading organizational flow. That informs our project information requirements, but it also informs our asset information requirements. Because if I want to go net zero or sustainability factors, whatever, what is the assets that I want to manage or use in the future? Right, so we mostly look at our mechanical equipment, light fixtures, and those kind of items that are high ticket asset items. But you can go down to level items if you're looking at facility management processes. They want to know what door this is, so they want to barcode and tag that door. So in our asset information requirements, this is typically again on the client's point of view mostly. So what is the assets we want to manage, part of our portfolio, our digital assets going forward? Makes sense?
Hope so. We're getting there.
It's also not just barcoded for barcoding. It's there to say that it's an electronic door that opens by itself.
Or
And
standard
if it doesn't
symbol.
make like that, it's actually the machine keys. So it's those things
But it's
that goes together.
No, exactly.
And we need to know on which floor it is, on which division, on which wing is it, what's the people that came to install it.
Exactly.
Do we still have warranties on that bracket that's now no longer working? So asset management becomes quite a heavy thing after the project has been undertaken.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the two factors. You've got your operations facility
Yes.
management, your OM,
Yes.
and you've got your FM, facility management. They do have different points of views around what is assets and how it should be managed. And you need, this is why this document exists, is to take these point of views and decide how we put it together, what information is relevant or not. Some of our corporate clients, they actually asset tag chairs. So they want to know where this chair is supposed to be. So if you move it to a different location, you just freak them out completely. But that's the types of criteria guys need to look at and understand and ultimately decide, is this relevant for our project, for the digital delivery? Because the big ticket item here is, the more clients specify in your PIR, your AIR, that is what consultants are going to cost against. So if I want to asset tag my chairs, what is the interior designer going to tell me? Well, now I need to put a barcode, it's going to take me so much longer to do this part of it. So again, it's always going to be a balance between your facility teams, the project teams, the consultants, what is allowed for the project budget to make this work and usable.
That's right.
So most guys start with, like I said, the big ticket items to start at least driving this change down the line.
Which leads us to our exchange information requirements. Now, this is where the appointed party or the client will send it out to the teams on the project, and they will add information how they will go about delivering this information. For example, the document combines a lot of information, maybe per a unique project. And there's so many different projects, project size, complexity, the assembly of the project team, software packages that will go into this document as well. So basically, it's a document containing information from the delivery teams on project execution. All right?
Yeah, from the client's point of view, this is how I foresee this project to run. Now, if you look at the workflows that Ahmed brought in front, when you go out to tender, this is one of the critical documents that goes with your tender out. Because in response to this, and this is where the BIM execution plan starts coming in, is when I submit for a tender, I'm going to read this document and to say, to comply to this client's requirement, I need Revit as an example, or if it's, you know, civil 3D, if I'm on the civil infrastructure side, I need to start modeling in the X manner, I need to do 3D coordination. Again, my list becomes quite long as a consultant, and do I have the technical skills or not? But this document is my guiding factor on how the client foresees the delivery of this digital project.
And then the mobilization plan. Now, a lot of people don't do this. The mobilization plan is a test. So it's testing your production methods. For example, we're testing the data flow between applications, or for example, making sure that the model elements are going to provide properties like your glass panel quantities for the quantity surveyor. Just testing how it's going to work and taking lessons therefrom. You want to add anything to that, Michiel?
No,
right.
mobilization plans are quite tricky.
And then, as Michiel said, things can go wrong. Things get tricky. And so if we have a risk register of what issues we might encounter and how to counter them, that would be vital for the flow of the project. Another documentation, very valuable, that we sort of leave out, we sort of sideline.
Question, who does risk assessment on your projects going forward, like in general? And do you guys do it in your offices, architectural engineering, clients?
Facilities management.
Facility management. So, I mean, I've been, since the ISO standards came out, I started doing investigation to risk assessment, and I was actually surprised how bad we do it. From an architectural point of view. Most architectural firms I worked for had never done a risk assessment on a project. They don't even know what potential problems there. Yeah, there's a big ticket items, council takes too long, or design changes on site, client is always a big risk item, but it's never been documented. And ultimately, if you look at the ISO standards, the biggest criteria is you know what you need to know for the project, but it's never been documented. So let's document this into an actionable items, into trackable items, into information. We know what's happening on this project going forward.
And it helps when you have a template for your risk register as well. We don't be starting from scratch. So using the templates that Planly provides for us makes it a little bit easier. We're not starting from ground zero.
We promote Planly. It's one of the only products out there that really looks at the ISO management and how you collaborate with consultant. You can replicate all of these templates in Word, Excel, SharePoint, whatever websites. It's more time consuming. The platform, and I'm putting it out there now, the platform has been developed with this in mind for over 5 or 6 years now.
That's right.
So it's really got its teeth into what should go into this. The templates that Ahmed is referring to, it wasn't them producing templates. They actually got a global amount of people that contributed to these templates. So it's guys leading in ISO standards or trying to adopt it to understand it better. So again, it's not a company producing templates, it's actually a community developing these templates.
All right.
Yeah, basically.
So the next document, very important, is your BEP, your BIM execution plan. And this is now would be the answer to the owner's requirements. You know, it will have the appointing parties' requirements, their processes, their steps for delivery. That's right, the how to, and inform the owner what's their plan to deliver, basically.
Yeah, so I think most of the guys here has kind of heard of a BIM execution plan. In most cases, the first document I see coming out of a BIM project is like, we have a BIM execution
There we
plan.
go.
No one reads it. But ultimately, this is actually a response to the client's needs. So how do you produce a document that is not in response to something? It's like, what's the question? You know. So, but yeah, it at least started a process where guys were documenting what are we going to do to deliver a better project. And it's from a technical point of view, our architects, our engineers, it's something we can relate to a lot easier because this is our how-to guide. We're going to use product X. We're going to collaborate in this manner. We're going to do coordination in this way. This is our criteria. This is how we need file sharing, whatever. It's documented. But on a technical level, it makes sense to the design consultants. An interesting thing about the BIM execution plan, you can actually transfer ownership of a BIM execution plan. So during our design stages, typically our architect, in most cases, manages the BIM execution plan. And then during construction stages, this can go over to the contractor. When you start looking at your shop drawings and detailing the manufacturing processes, how do we fulfill that end piece of construction? And how do we capture that as-built or construction information back into our models or into a system for facility management, etc. But it can become complicated if you start transferring ownership.
That's right. There's a lot of information in there. But part of it is also your task and master information delivery plans. So basically, these are your tasks list or your to-do lists, how you're going to execute those deliverables. And you got the TIDP and the MIDP, and the master information delivery plans is set by the lead appointing party, which is a set of task delivery plans.
Yeah, so you break it down, like each consultant will create, me as an architect, I'm going to produce X, so here's my walls, doors, windows, whatever, right? And I put it into a contractor's program, dates, events, when, what will happen, to kind of build up my digital model. But then each consultant develops this task information delivery plan. Mechanical have their ways, your structural engineers, whatever, they each have their own. And then your lead appointing party, guy that takes responsibility, basically takes all these documents and compile it into a master delivery plan. And the idea behind it is to kind of understand the sequence of events. I can't put an HVAC unit into this room if I don't have a ceiling. Right? Makes sense.
Exactly.
So, and that's what starts highlighting out in the master information delivery plan. I know sometimes mechanical engineers on large buildings like to work from the top down because it just makes sense for their flow and equipment planning. Where architects, we start from the ground up because that just makes sense, coming out the ground. So how do we manage these design tools in the process?
So there's a priority structure that you can use within your task information delivery plans as well, which will assist everybody on the project.
And this also highlights any potential risks on your project.
Exactly. Also scheduling, yeah?
Again, it's all in good. How do you take the information that comes from the various tasks and the master information plan and combine that back into what is the Bible in the picture, which is the contractor?
So there's two concepts we're playing here with. You've got your digital asset and your physical asset.
Yeah.
see them as two different outcomes.
Because they don't often look the same, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of. Or this one starts looking like that one 5 years afterwards. So the principle is we want to spend more time on our digital side to plan that out, to scope it out, to do our risk assessment on the digital component before we actually hit the physical side. Because if we can resolve all our issues or most of our issues for design-related activities in our, according to the ISO, it means when I hit construction, 80%, 70, 90% of construction-related issues have been kind of dealt with.
Yeah.
And the ISO, actually the ISO don't talk about the physical asset really, always talks about the digital asset. So just, and I know it's kind of, try and separate it in your mind. I know it's the overlap is so much we can't really, but if you had to think of, I'm just producing a building for the building's sake, not what's going to be built, what will this look like? How will I use this to enhance handover facility management, construction processes, things like that? Make sense?
All right.
Are there current softwares that turns this to logic when you are scheduling your project?
Sorry,
When
logic?
you are scheduling your project for execution, are there softwares that currently turns these delivery plans to logics so that when you're sequencing operations, it follows your delivery plan?
So it
Planning.
Plannerly helps you with planning that. And like what you would typically do in a Reiki matrix, you'll say who's responsible for this item. So in the task information delivery plan, I will basically say Ahmed is responsible for modeling up my walls. He's going to start on ground floor. So we estimated ground floor's modeling is going to take a week. So now everyone can see that's my task. Then the next stage is going to be windows and doors. So for the following week is going to focus on that. So kind of how you schedule it, and we know Ahmed is responsible for that. So when the structural engineer looks at it, he's like, oh well, I can only start really placing my columns by midweek, because then I have some walls to work off, as an example. So Plannerly does it quite well in that sense, with, like Ahmed had the little animation at the front, where it shows you the little icons of what the elements are, it throws it into a scoping section, and then from that you can put it into a plan section, like when what activities will be.
So you schedule it. So this assists us with that wastage of out-of-sequence work, where we have to wait for another consultant to, deal with their item first before we come in. So, and this was the accountable matrix, your Reiki charts. Accountable, responsible, accountable, consultant, informed. So which is the accountable team? What are they responsible for? Who's the responsible team member? Is there a checklist that they can be checked against, informed? Who's the managers that are informed on that particular project as well?
Again, your project managers have some sort of outline typically for construction processes, but our design processes have been kind of lacking in that sense of what should be happening. Again, companies have a structure in place. You always have a lead architect or lead engineer or whatever the case might be and a bunch of juniors, but it's never been documented. I hope it makes sense.
I think this would. When it comes to the responsibility matrix, basically I would think this is outlining the right BIM for the right people at the right time. So for the right reasons. And who is doing what and when, and document it. All right. And that also needs to, all those documentations need to come into your lessons learned part of things. And I don't think we ever do this, where we've been through a project and we learn a few things, most of the time those hard lessons. And, when the project is done, we move on to the new project, and we, without using the knowledge that we've learned from, those hard lessons from the previous sort of project. What are your thoughts on this one, Michiel?
So I've seen mining clients do
Yes.
this quite well. I want to say the mining has been adopting this without any formal documentation for years now, where they've planned a lot of these steps. It's not just better line. The lessons learned component, which is actually quite interesting for me, is it's broken up in my mind into different areas. You got a lessons learned as a whole design team together. What did we learn about a collaboration, the coordination, the process, the design methodology that was applied, whatever, right? So I can take that and use it on the next project that's similar, or with other consultants. You can also do the lessons learned in-house. What did we learn from doing this project? How did we engage with this? How did we, what was the pros and cons? What can we do different on our next project? The one thing that ISO actually talks a lot about is, it's basically when you do delivery, it's a phased approach. It's not design, handover. We have to look at these milestones along the way, which in South Africa is really difficult. But we can build our own little milestones to say, well, let's work up until a certain point. Let's do lessons learned before we hit the next stages of our design process. Because we want to be able to change something. If coordination is not working, why are we going to hamper the whole construction process through with the same task method that doesn't work? Let's learn something small, incremental about it. Let's change it, test it out, and then let's do it again on our next phase or milestone. So yeah, for me, lessons learned it's becoming really, really critical in how we look at any future projects.
And if we are unsure what goes in there or where to start, there's templates for that as well. So there are a lot of templates. All right, so we have the templates. Great. Now what? What do we do with those templates? All right, so let's learn about the ISO 19650 workflow. So I'm going to start off with the 8 stages that we have in the ISO workflow. So you've got your assessment and need. Number 1, you've got your invitation to tender. You can see the documentations that are required there. You've got your tender response. Number 4 is appointment. You've got your mobilization. And then you've got your, the collaboration.
Information production, information delivery model, and project closeout.
So it's nice that it's broken up into the stages. We've got the swim lanes for the party is appointed party. You've got your lead appointed party and your appointed party, and strategically set other documentations that are needed per party for each stage.
I think just to break down the parties, because it's not an actual woohoo party. Your appointing party is your client. He appoints people, hence appointing party. Your lead appointed party is typically your principal agent. But it can also be different, your lead structural engineering firm and things like that. And then your appointing party, so there can be an overlap between lead appointed and appointing parties, but so those two are pretty much the same. So if you're doing a design build kind of relationship, you might have one guy becoming the lead appointed party, and you'll have an engineering firm, a civil architectural firm as appointing parties. So hopefully the SA version will change this terminology, which makes more sense to us. But the ISO's kind of try and keep it generic for a global stance point. But yeah, the way I typically break it down: appointing party, client, developer, builder, owner, operator, and then the other two typically are consultants, contractors, etc.
So what we've done is we have a system where we've divided the various documentation into 4 parts. So part 1 over here, the documents for the appointing party, which is the client, or the owners that will need to produce during stages 1 and 2. All right, there's a documentation over there. I want to send this out to everybody.
Yeah,
And then, and then part 2 is the documents that the lead appointed parties, so your lead architect, engineer, etc., they will need to produce these for stage 3. Stage 3. So part 2, stage 3.
Don't relate these to Proxa or any SACAP fine architect agreement. It's not the same.
And then you have part 3. So those are the documents that lead appointing party. So your clients and the appointing party will need to produce for stages 4. And then the lastly is the documents that all parties will need to produce for stages 5 to 8. All right. So this little chart helps us divide this documentation into the specific stages. I think it's something that will be handy for everybody.
And for the guys that just want to look at panelly, you can see the different modules within the system that allows for those little actions or activities within the system. By all means, go test it out. It's a great platform.
All right. So in part 1, you've got your information to tender documentation, which is your EIR, which consists of your OIR, your PIR, and your AIR. All right, so that forms part of your invitation to tender documents. And then you get, and once that's created, we will need to invite teams to the document, as you can see on Planly. you need to manage the permission to those documents as well, and the specific sections. You'll also need to manage permission status. So are they a manager? Are they just users? Are they going to view these? Are they able to edit? Are they editors? Are the managers editors on this particular documents when the teams are invited? And then we have your invitation to tender, where we need to share and publish this information. So comments and feedback via email is not going to work. But, somebody is not going to be attached to that email, and we're probably on site. But if it's in the same platform, in the same area where we can comment, sort of like on social media, and people who are tagged in there will be able to see that quicker with those notifications.
So what you guys will also see the 3 stages. The ISO talks about it quite often, is any information has to go through different stages. Models, documents, whatever the case might be. Work in progress, I'm working on it a little bit more in my environment, on my server, whatever the case might be. Shared, I made it available for comments, public opinion, call it that. And once I've consolidated all those comments and information, then I can say, well, here it is, everyone approved it, now it's published. Okay, same with construction drawings. You can take the same approach through the stages. And yeah, the ISO actually has a graph of how this should look like. So always keep that in mind. Work in progress, typically, my environment, so if you look at a 3D model, I work in isolation, then I make it available to the rest of consultants, our weekly sharing of information, right? And there's typically between work in progress, there is an approval stage, and that's where the lead architect or lead engineer will look at the drawing and say, cool, I'm happy, pass it on for the consultants to look at, then it's shared. And that's where we coordinate and collaborate to make sure everything is working. Once that is working and collaborated, then you make it published. And then published is more of a for construction or for use idea. Okay.
So once we get an invite, we need to respond to that. And when we respond, we need to get involved and we need to collaborate. We need to ask questions. So the lead appointed parties, which are your architects, lead engineers, etc., they need to produce documents, namely your PERM execution plan, your risk registers, and the mobilization plan for your tender response. Now, once we get an invite, there you go, tender response documents,
Once we respond.
PEP, risk mobilization, yeah. So once we get an invite, we need to respond to that. And the teams should be able to collaborate, but wouldn't it make sense if we're collaborating on the same platform online? Now, because we need to consolidate that information, people need feedback, all needs to be in the same environment. All right. And then you get to your appointment workflow. Now, this is where the lead appointed parties need to include these responsibilities and the tasks that need to be carried out. So this will involve your TIDP and your MIDP, where is it? Responsibility matrix. All right, so this is what Michiel was talking about, the element. And to visually understand, we need to break that up into the milestones or the uses. What are we building this building for, Is it the structural estimate, or the next stage will be coordination, and then lastly will be asset handover. Also, what list of items are required for each consultant to accomplish their goals? So a set of elements, a library that you'll need, which you can find there as well. Again, what information is required? We'll need a lot of information per each element, perhaps. And then who is responsible? Structural engineer at coordination stage for that, and then the MEP engineer at MEP coordination for the HVAC, perhaps. So teams will also need to set a specific level of information, again, for those elements, for those libraries, which you can add to the online platform. All right? Also, within the tasks list, we see that the task information delivery, how and when it's going to be delivered, with the dates set for each stage. There we go, stage 1, stage 4. This is just an example, but stages according to how we set it on our project. So a little bit of a timeline there as well. And not only can we filter by responsibility, We can also filter by milestone. So is it coordination, is it handover, who's responsible for those libraries or those elements at handover, and per team as well. And you'd want to make it a little bit of a document, contractual document, hold people accountable to that as well.
PDFs are still contractually binding.
Yes. So we know the responsibilities and the handovers, but we need to verify and validate that information just to see if it meets requirements. All right. So, and we need to learn for that also. So we've got our lessons learned there as well. So just mobilization. These are the last 4 stages. And how do we manage updates and status? Each team should be able to filter their scope, should be able to filter by their teams, and see the tasks. You know, what's work in progress, what's not verified, what's on track, and a Kanban board will make things a little bit easier for us to manage that.
So the way you guys should look at verification, or QA/QC mostly, is we don't want to produce this nice 3D model with everything we believe is correct to give it to the facility managers and they tell us half the information is missing. You have to go back and then re-add all of that information. That's why also our milestones are so important, is because you do a QA/QC process throughout every milestone of the design stages to get people to look at the information. Is it correct? Is it justifiable for whatever we've decided upon that milestone? So by the time we end the project and we need to hand over these digital assets, all relevant information is there. We can reduce rework effectively.
Again, you know, validation of those requirements, being able to check that information, understand it in the same location. What were the requirements? And being able to link it to the model that's on the cloud. So linking those assets to the model that are on the cloud, what's been verified, and what can we take over to the next stage. So also simple model validation, so you know, being able to easily link that, and the power behind linking your model on ACC to your BIM management platform and assigning those tasks to the relevant people makes things a little bit easier for us to manage. And then also you'll want to visualize your status, you know, how much of the model has been completed, you know, how much of the tasks that we still have on hand, what's been checked, what's been procured, where are we behind? So having the entire model on there and having those nice dashboards showing us what's been completed, what's been verified by the managers, what can we take over to the next milestone or stage. So these are the high-level steps that you'd need to follow to conform to the ISO standards. But we've covered the steps and the documents needed from different parties involved at the different stages. So in summary, the problem used to be that the tools that we used to manage communications did not quite connect to our BIM tools. And we have great authoring analysis tools, but we still use business management tools for building information modeling and management. You know, and these tools are mostly disconnected from each other. They don't talk to each other. They're disintegrated, and they don't conform with the BIM workflow. All right, and I think the world is moving to digital, and so we want to move away from these disintegrated tools. You know, we want to move away from these disconnected tools, and Plenary combines the best parts into a cloud-based BIM management platform.
Which is heavy product placement.
There we go.
No, so the principle is, if you just one back, it's not that you can't do it with those other platforms. I mean, I spoke to you guys earlier today. We can use different ways of achieving the same results. What Plenary just does well is they've provided a solution that mitigates having to have Word, Excel, PowerPoint for all these kind of other elements and make it more accessible to other people. Hence why product placement. Yeah, so it's just, again, thinking for the right tool for the right job at the end of the day.
That's right. And just to get started, for your ISO journey, make sure you have templates. We don't want to be reinventing the wheel every time we start with a project. Create and manage all documents in one platform. Wouldn't it make sense if it's online? All right, anywhere you're working from, we're able to access that project. and use collaboration tools to get agreements, your ISO approval. Make it a simple tool. It must be easy to filter. You want those contractual documents, in one place. Being
Everything
able.
that makes your life
There
easier.
we go. Yeah. Verify it as well. Verification can be difficult unless it's online, collaborated. And have some templates, have the correct software and framework, perhaps. I know we've run over time for our Q&A, but if there are any questions, let us know, write them down, send us an email.
Any questions now quickly?
I'm going to leave this on, just so that you guys can scan that.
Is
Yes.
there an employment opportunity?
I'm covering that kind of process in one of the other workshop, BIM roles, basically, or the different roles in the industry. But yes, there's, based on the ISO standard, what's been happening as digital workflows, there's a whole new departments that have to be kind of open up in design teams, facility management areas, client side of things, project managers, QSs, whatever. There's basically adopting people that knows technology better and using that for those areas.
Second thing.
Yep.
How do you link this to the assets, physical asset project?
Barcodes, QR codes, IoT devices.
No, I mean your capital project development plan. Like, you have got a construction project now. Your physical assets, how is that linked now to the digital
QR
assets?
codes, barcodes, IoT devices. If you look at, most commonly barcodes and QR codes. If you look at what the future is doing with digital twins, if you read up that is physical connections between using an IoT device on an aircon unit, so you can see when it's on and off, you can see the airflow between it on the digital side, but it also, that IoT device tells me where it is in the physical asset. So if I want to go find it for maintenance, because I can see it's faulty in my digital twin, then I know which one to go fix. And if you look at some of the visualization tools out there, AR, VR, and those kind of things help with planning and finding those assets better and quicker. Naturally, it also relies on, if you're doing furniture, you won't be able to track that as a digital twin per se, but the technology is getting there. I can track my phone anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Why can't I track a chair anywhere in the world? Might not be cost effective.
All right.
We implemented NFC tags now for people to book a desk. So now
I'm
you
playing
can,
with that now
so you can actually now link the NFC tag, which is an RF,
with the user.
with your barcode
Yes.
and track the tabletop at least.
So I think the
Because
next
that's
session wants to
doable.
start there. So I'm just going to leave it as that. Any other questions? We are around here. Drop us a mail. Come and have a talk to us. We